We're getting a good start time today. This looks rather funny from my perspective because we have all these empty seats and we have these two rows that are shoulder to shoulder. Can we squeeze anyone else onto their row here? So again, James chapter 1, we left off around this verse here. I know this screen is not the usual full screen PowerPoint, but we've changed something on the computer and we can't figure out what it is. So this is the best we can do today. But it'll be at least be a little larger than it was that other week where we had the problem. So in James chapter 1, verse 17, we actually began discussing this last week, but let's just do a little revision or review here. Every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. In the exercise of his will, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would be a kind of first fruits among his creatures. I think we asked a little bit on our thoughts on verse 17. I don't think we have to review everyone's thoughts again. But the idea is that the perfect gifts are not the things that we think are perfect gifts, but they're things like salvation and blessings from God. Those are the perfect gifts, not a new Camaro or something like that. Who said that? That is funny. Does anyone remember the Promise Keepers movement? It was from the denominations. Okay, well, I got into that for a while when we were at the Methodist Church before we became Christians. And we went to a big rally at Tropicana Stadium and, thousands and thousands of men. It was a men-driven group. And I remember everyone was posting their prayers and petitions on these notice boards in the alcoves as you go into the stadium. And one person said they wanted a new Ferrari. He just said, I'm praying for a new Ferrari. Like, okay, go big.
St. Pete Thomas was totally enamored with him.
Were they? Yeah, they was big for a while. I don't know what happened to them. Yeah.
Of course, I go way back with the St. Pete Times, too.
Yeah.
Y'all got Ferraris and just left them away.
Yeah, only the leaders. Anyway, so the perfect gifts we're talking about are not what we think of in material ways. We need to remember that God measures things on an eternal scale, not on a temporal or fleeting scale. We tend to look at things that we need now, and God looks with a little bit different of a time horizon than we have. With whom there is no shifting or variation or shifting shadow. God's goodness is constant and steady, as he knows at all times and in every situation what is best for us. And I think sometimes we don't know what's best for us. We're asking with the wrong motives, possibly, or the wrong intentions, or our goals are not in line with God's goals. The word Father of lights, at least when I was studying this, it said that this can be tied into the words no variation or shifting shadow. Just as God is the creator of the celestial lights, which are constant, steady, and predictable, so too his gifts to us have the same predictability. So we have to realize God's perfect gifts are constantly for our own good. That's where I'll sum it up.
Well, that's why you can have, I'll read my hand. That's why you can have peace with God, because he does not change.
Yes.
You're not going to wake up to a different set of rules.
Yes.
That's the only constant.
Yes.
Everywhere in all your relationships, things, not everybody understands the rules of the engagement, and so you end up with problems because things change.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't like your current situation, wait, it will change.
We've all had friends and bosses that are never consistent, and they're the hardest ones to deal with because everything's always changing. God is not like that. Charles?
I think it's interesting, the term shifting shadow. The shadow never gets far from the object that casts the shadow.
Excellent.
Now, the angle of the light on the object will move the shadow in different places, but it's still right there at the object that's casting the shadow. That's a description of God. He's never far from us.
I'm going to put that down for a sermon potential there. September. I already know my date. Bob?
God is perfect. One cannot change perfection.
Excellent.
So thereby, the rules are the rules, and that's it.
Yes, excellent point. Will?
He said also is the Father of lights, and Jesus said we're the light of the world. So if a person says that we belong to God and we're doing the things that God has commanded and we know who God is, but is acting in a way that's opposite of what God has commanded how a person should conduct himself, then they absolutely probably cannot be in the family. They can't really call him father if there's a consistent way of living that is not reflecting the light, because we're the light of the world.
Excellent. Great points. So I've heard people say, not often, but sometimes, that God is evolving and ever changing and maturing over time, and he's changing the universe as it evolves. But I think verses like this pretty much refute that. There's a consistency with God. He is not ever changing. He's not evolving. He doesn't work that way. Chris and then Charlotte.
I wish we could emulate his parenting and our parenting.
Yes, yeah.
If we were more consistent, we might have better results with our children.
Excellent point. Excellent point. When you're in the thick of it parenting, that's hard to be consistent sometimes, isn't it? Charlotte?
When I think of God's changing nature, I think about the fact that when they go to the moon or to the International Space Station, that God hasn't moved it.
Yeah. It's still there. In the exercise of his will, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would be a kind of first fruits among his creatures. Verse 18 is easy to overlook, but I think it's an important part of James's book. Remember how I said James is giving us this advice column of how to apply our faith in our Christian life? But he's also has this thread going through trying to show that it's our actions, it's our works of faith or of obedience that are key to our ongoing salvation. So let me explain what I'm thinking here. So he's not going against Paul's teachings here, which some accused the book of James of doing, or James of doing. Let me go to the next one. So he sets the stage for his next point, which is God's will gives us birth through the word of truth. That's our salvation. That's when we become Christians, through baptism. That's God's will. We become the first fruits among his creation. Let me continue. He's supporting the truth that this birth, our new birth, is through God's will. It has nothing to do with our efforts. And yet, through that, we become new creatures, and we're the first fruits of his creatures. I have one more point on this, but any comments up to that point? Do you see what I'm trying to build there? Is James is trying to still mention that this gift of salvation is through God. It has nothing to do with what we've done. And yet he's going to go on to explain how we have to live to stay in this salvation. Charlotte?
Well, God's word of truth shows us how to prepare ourselves so that God can give birth to us.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we have to position ourselves
Yes.
for God to do something and give us birth. His word prepares us for what we need to do, but those aren't works that are of ourselves.
Yes.
They are works from the word of God.
Excellent. Excellent. Steve?
Well, I mean, a point, I didn't use that in my sermon, but one of the points I was trying to make during my sermon is that before the foundation of the earth, God chose you, chose man, and he extended an invitation. All we have to do is accept the invitation. So when it's nothing that you do, it's not your work, you just have to, God chose you, you just have to choose him. And he wants you to choose him. And so the idea of the chosen people, and there's some conversations about that, about Israel at this point in time. God chose Abraham for a bloodline through which Jesus would come. He didn't choose that set of genetics because they were holy. And Abraham accepted that God had chosen him and he would be blessed through him. But all the hard work is done on God's side. He extends the invitation. You just have to accept the invitation and choose him.
Yes.
And so, like you say, it's got nothing to do with our efforts or our works. If I want to go, if there's a party and I'd like to go to it, but I don't get an invitation, there's no works that I can do to get to the party. I have to receive an invitation.
Good analogy. Excellent.
John,
Yes, Will.
Brother James, I don't want to get ahead, but to me, James is prompting us to not forget the things that are being written throughout the entire Bible about God and what God expects of his people. Human beings just love to forget, and human beings just love to make excuses about why we can't do anything, and like you said, distractions, all kind of distractions. But Paul tells us that, yeah, you're saved, but you're not saved because you're good. You're saved because the Lord is saving you and me and everybody else from his wrath to come. There's some wrath coming that people don't talk about, because let's put that way in the back of our mind. Why in the world didn't the Lord come in the first place? And why is James telling us? Because there's some wrath coming that the Lord don't want any of us to experience. And so, going back to what Charlotte said, yeah, we have to work at conducting ourselves, putting off the old, putting on the new, and that's not a snap your finger. That's not a bury it in the water and you come up and you do nothing wrong any longer. It's a process. We died, now we're reborn, and now we crawl, and then we walk, and then we run. You know.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, Steve.
Just
Other Steve.
My Bible. Both Paul and James define faith as a living, productive trust in Christ. Genuine faith cannot be dead to morality or barren to works.
Yeah, very good. And that's what they're trying to tie, or James is trying to tie together. He's not refuting what Paul said. He's harmonizing it. Steve?
Well, to try to tie some of what you said in your sermon and what Will's saying over there, distractions, worry, don't worry about things you can't change. Well, I mean, you do need to worry and be upset about the coming wrath. But it does create stress if you realize that it's a strange thing that people won't accept it.
Yeah.
But if you are surrounded by people that keep telling you there's a wrath coming and here's the escape, yet you don't step through the door, then you have this. I don't care who you are. You can be an atheist all you want to, but in the back of your mind, you've been told somewhere in your life that wrath is coming, and Jesus is the way out, and you just.
Yeah.
And next time you run across that guy that's going to tell that same story again, you're not even going to want to talk to him because you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear about the wrath because it'll upset you. And way down in your body, it does disturb you.
Yeah. Yeah. Rocky?
And that's the spirit of the world. Satan has deceived people because they do not believe wrath is coming. They do not believe that. And we understand that they will be lost and their spirit will be lost because they don't walk through that door that he's talking about.
Great points.
In the world, the world says, oh no, there's no such punishment, Well, there really is. It's
Yeah.
coming.
When they don't see it, hold on, Chris, we have a comment up here first.
I've always heard this metaphor, English like this. Picture a fence. You got the devils on one side, and God's on the other side. You got people sitting on this fence, and you got talking about this wrath of God. And I'm under the same understanding, same concept. You got all these things going on. And the Bible talks about there'll be wars, rumors of wars. But you got this metaphorical fence, and if you're sitting on that fence when this wrath comes, God's going to take that fence, and if you're sitting on that fence, He's going to knock you to that other side. And there's no answer.
Excellent. Good metaphor. Chris?
It's about keeping our faith under pressure.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Charles.
Yes, sorry, Calvin.
In Romans chapter 11 and verse number 22, it says, "Behold the goodness and severity of God on them which fail severity, but towards you goodness if you continue in the goodness, otherwise you be cut off."
Romans 11, very good. Yeah, very good passage on that. Yep. Wow.
One more, one more
Two
point
verses.
until I think of another one. My daughter, Catherine, for the audience, sent me a text, and she was reading some things about we need to defend Israel because they're the chosen people. And she asked me, are they the chosen people? Well, like Bev, I said, come on, you're going to send me a text and ask me that question? So I sent her a text back which tried to give this answer. They were originally chosen, and they're referred to as the chosen people. Today, all people are chosen. It even goes back farther because that's my reference before the foundation of the earth, and I gave that to Kate. We're all chosen. They were chosen for a different purpose, but they are not the chosen people. We are all equally chosen today.
That's right.
So but there's this argument out there that we're obligated because those that bless Israel will be blessed and those that don't will be cursed. Well, there isn't that. You see, most of the world, I think, doesn't understand the concept of the original people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there is an Israel, but those borders were written by the UN.
Yeah, yeah.
God did not put them back in there and miraculously wipe the people out of there to put them in there.
Right.
So there's a political misunderstanding about the chosen.
Exactly.
And even a scriptural misunderstanding about the chosen.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've also heard another funny thing. God says, "I am," and it takes the letter I and the word "am." What two countries do you get?
Israel and America. Interesting. Okay. Oh, Charlotte.
Oh, I just wanted to say in Galatians 6:16, the Bible refers to the Israel of God.
Oh, yeah.
We are all the Israel. Christians are now the Israel of God.
That's what, Galatians 6,
6 and 16.
6:16 for anyone that didn't hear. Okay. I put this up again. Remember that James has addressed this letter to the 12 tribes of the dispersion. What would the words first fruits mean to the early readers if they were mainly a Jewish audience?
First fruits of the harvest.
Yeah, what was the festival of first fruits? Was that Pentecost, if I'm not wrong? Yeah. So it was the first fruits of the harvest that God has blessed them with, but with the promise that more is coming. Isn't that the concept?
Yes.
Something more or better is coming. So we are the first fruits of good things to come. I guess that's where James is going with that concept. Let's continue. You know this, my beloved brothers and sisters. Now everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For a man's anger does not bring about the righteousness of God. Therefore, ridding yourselves of all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness, in humility, receive the word implanted, which is able to save your souls. But prove yourselves not just hearers who deceive themselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, He is like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For once he has looked at himself and gone away, he has immediately forgotten what kind of person he was. But one who has looked intently at the perfect law, the law of freedom, and has continued in it, not having become a forgetful hearer, but an active doer, this person will be blessed in heaven. James now starts to outline traits that we should adopt if we are to be the first fruits of God's gift of salvation. So what he's given us through salvation, we're supposed to adopt certain traits to show that we are the first fruits of this salvation.
And what would be the characteristics of the first fruits that you bring in to the priest?
The best.
The best. You don't, the stuff that became moldy and you don't want it anymore, you don't bring that in. The
Yeah.
first fruits are the best.
Ah, good point. Good point, Rocky.
From an agrarian point of view, my grandparents were farmers. And if you have a plant, the first fruit that comes on that plant is the best quality fruit.
Okay.
It is always perfect. You won't find a plant that's a viable plant that doesn't produce the best it possibly can with the first fruit. And that's what you want to give to God, the first fruit.
Excellent. Will?
That 19th verse is always a challenge for anyone that say they want to follow Christ, because it says to be quick to hear, and that could be audibly or that could be spiritually. I believe it's both. Quick to hear, take time to listen, to understand, to process, to gather some facts instead of going on fantasy or somebody's imaginative thing that's going on in their head, and it becomes truth to folks. Well, that popped in their head, and now just run with that. Slow to speak, you know. I won't say that I've overcome that. She'll tell you, be quiet now. You talk 80 minutes. Slow to anger. I don't know about anybody else, but anger is one of those things that's built into human beings, emotional. Even the Lord got angry. Come on. Now the Lord got angry, but he said, be ye angry and don't sin. So there's a lot of homework for us to do. We have to find out what it is that makes me sin if I'm angry. We have to know when to shut up. Now I'm getting ready to stop talking. And everyone must be quick to hear and understand before they start running with the baton.
Yeah. I think everyone's guilty of that at one time or the other. Charles?
Yeah, you may deal with this when you get on the anger part, but I think we need to understand that what makes us angry today probably is not what caused them angry.
Right.
We get angry when someone cuts us off in traffic. They were angry because of the way they were being persecuted and treated as Christians. And it still applies to us. We shouldn't get angry when we're cut off in traffic.
Yeah.
But they had their cause of their anger was probably entirely different from what causes us to be angry today.
Excellent. Walt and then Bob.
Christ's anger was most demonstrated at the religious elite.
Yes.
Because he knew they knew better.
Yes.
And they were twisting.
They were hypocrites.
the principles
Yeah.
of his word.
Excellent.
Quick to hear, slow to speak.
Mhm.
That's why God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. And sometimes it would serve me better to take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth.
Duct tape works good too. Bob?
I was just going to add that thought that the best word for describing first fruits is that it's the freshest.
The freshest, like Rocky was saying. Yeah. Oh, very good. Very good.
Without limit.
I know we're not going to get much further, and I don't want to rush through this by any means. So I just wanted to mention something. I read an article on the word offending someone. You know, nowadays everybody's offended by everything, but they use it to shut down any disagreement with their viewpoint. And I think that's dangerous. We need to be able to err and maybe defend our viewpoints, but they always say, well, that offended me. Well, it didn't really offend you. It's just is different than what you believe, you know. So we have to watch how we use words when we're talking about differences of opinion or belief. Elaine, and then we'll quit.
I just wanted to say regarding the quick to hear, slow to speak thing, we're required to give an answer for the joy that lies within us. And there are many times when people will come to us for advice. And the only way I want to give godly advice, and the only way to do that is to hear the whole story. So it does not behoove me to quickly decide what they're going through. I better really listen.
Yeah.
Listen to what the whole story is from their point of view,
Yeah.
and then pray over it and choose my words carefully and do it properly so that God is pleased and He's glorified, and it moves the situation, whatever it is, towards Him.
Yeah. Brad?
And I know you want to shut it down, but I think it's a lesson from the church, and you mentioned in your sermon. We have the elders in the church. When I was a young man, I would get fired up about subjects that were going on in a congregation, and I didn't have this. I wanted to speak a little bit more, but I would bring it to the elders, and they were so patient. They would contemplate, and I would get like, I wanted a quick answer. But sometimes we don't need a quick answer. So in the church, we get fired up about issues, whether it's political.
Yeah.
And I think it's wise for us to go to our elders. They're there for a reason.
Yeah.
They have been put in place by God for a reason, and by the congregation, of course. For us, when we get upset about certain subjects, to go to them and then just listen to their wisdom, because it's fruitful for the church. And if not, it's dangerous. So I think this speaks volumes how God put leadership in place in the church.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, see you next week.
Thank you.